Hey, where are we going this weekend?
To Nana's house.
Nana's house?
Yeah.
In Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? When? Right now? Are we
Yeah.
going right now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. It's Friday, August 28th, and this is our first weekend headed back home to Connecticut to enjoy the weekend. Also grab some more stuff that we couldn't fit in the car, in the moving truck. See some family, maybe go to the beach. We'll keep the camera rolling all weekend. See what turns out. Let's do it. Are we here? Are you excited?
In for Nana.
There you go.
Get in for Nana.
Go bring it in.
Oh, thank you. Oh, can I have a hug?
Oh! Hey guys! Hey! What's up? My best buddy's here! Hey!
Saturday morning, and I wanted to take a couple minutes to take you guys on a pretty cool history journey here. A couple years ago, I should say probably 10 years ago or so, when I first started dating Amanda, her stepdad told me about these two old gravestones up in the woods that he found. Most recently, about 2 years ago, I found out a little back history on these graves, so I want to take you up there. Let's take the ATV up there, and I'll tell you guys a little story. Okay, I found it. Sometimes I get a little turned around when I come up here, but this is the Lewis family cemetery. This is a small little cemetery about a quarter mile through the woods, up some trails from my in-laws' house. And I want you to meet two people specifically. This is Oliver P. Lewis. And this other gentleman over here is Jonathan Gilbert. So there's a couple small unmarked graves here as well, which probably are other members of the Lewis family. But Oliver Lewis and Jonathan Gilbert are two pretty special people, so let's sit down for a little history lesson. So a couple years ago, I did a little bit of research and got in touch with a historian about kind of what the history of these two gentlemen has to say. Oliver Lewis here fought in the Connecticut 29th Regiment, which is an African-American militia part of the Civil War. And they were often put on the very front lines of some of the major battles throughout the Civil War up and down the east coast of the US. He died February 22nd, 1905, which means that he actually survived the Civil War, made it through all these crazy battles, and lived out the rest of his days here on the Lewis family farm. To go in a little bit more detail about the 29th Regiment, the 29th Colored Regiment of Connecticut, let me read a little bit about what these guys went through in the Civil War. This particular man belonged to a very famous African-American regiment of soldiers, the Connecticut 29th Colored Infantry, which makes it much cooler, much rarer, and much more historically significant. This is literally the cream of the crop when it comes to finding Civil War graves. I'll put a picture up of the Connecticut 29th Regiment. This picture was taken in the spring of 1864, and Oliver Lewis is very likely in this picture. If only we knew which person in the picture he was. The Connecticut 29th Colored Regiment formed in the last year of the war and was an early experiment designed to test the ability of African-American soldiers to fight effectively against Confederate forces. Prior to this, African-American soldiers were not allowed into military service, so this was a pretty huge breakthrough in itself. Unfortunately, as a consequence, these colored soldiers were introduced to some of the war's most dramatic and bloodiest battles ever fought on American soil. They were also highly discriminated by the white racist Union soldiers, and thus the 29th Colored Regiment was intentionally placed into the very front lines and most dangerous positions on the battlefield. This sort of suicidal assignment included one infamous occasion known as one of the bloodiest massacres in Civil War history, infamously known as the Battle of Thew Crater. On a brighter and much more significant note, it was the small group of soldiers, the Connecticut 29th Regiment, that were the very first men to enter and capture the prized Confederate capital city of Richmond, a capture which led directly to the surrender of the Confederate Army, and thus officially ending the American Civil War. This guy was on the front lines and he survived. Pretty awesome. Simply put, when it comes to American military history, this regiment is level epic. Also a cool little excerpt here. The movie Cold Mountain, I think it has Jude Law in it, inaccurately portrayed this scene at the Battle of the Crater by depicting white regiments forming the lead invasion. The film was boycotted by African American groups for its lack of African American soldiers, and for very good reasons. If the movie had portrayed the scene accurately, the group of 500 Caucasian men laying on the ground would have actually been African American, and that very group would have been the actual Connecticut 29th Colored Regiment. Jonathan Gilbert over here was in the French and Indian War. He was part of Captain Holmes' company and he died December 24th, 1825. So Jonathan Gilbert was probably an affluential white guy. Jonathan Gilbert was the chief inn holder of Hartford, Connecticut, and it was in his very house that the General Court assembled. He obviously had a rather profound social and political status in the early days of colonial America. Pretty awesome. Putting these two men together in the same cemetery leads me to conclude that the Gilbert surname was married into the Lewis family. And the Lewis family inherited the vast property and likely a large plantation, this land right here. Oliver Lewis most likely descended from the slaves of the Gilbert Lewis plantation, and upon being freed, adopted the surname Lewis and likely lived his remaining days after the Civil War on the Gilbert Lewis plantation. Anyways, I gotta head back, but I wanted to share this with you guys because I thought it was really, really cool. Hope you liked it. In the car, headed to the Brooklyn, Connecticut Fair for the afternoon. What are we gonna do?
See some cows
See some cows and eggs. Are we gonna go on something?
rides.
What?
Rides.
Yeah,
We're gonna go on rides. Aboo! Aboo! So this is the Brooklyn Fair. This is the oldest agricultural fair in the United States. It's from what I heard. This is its 166th year straight in operation. When you think small town New England, quaint towns, villages, this is exactly what you should think of. Everything from pumpkin growing contests to baked goods contests, anything you can grow, produce yourself, wine, beer, ciders, anything. You bring it here, you judge it, and you win ribbons and things like that. So, all kinds of carnival games. I'm good, thanks though. I don't play fair games, they're rigged.